Given the abundance of clay deposits close to the surface across Shropshire, it's hardly surprising that Shropshire has been the centre for the manufacture of clay products. Now, Roman pottery has been found in Shropshire, although more likely to have been made further down the Severn Valley. Saxon pottery has been found at the site of Shrewsbury Castle, from Staffordshire and Gloucestershire. Pottery found on Pride Hill from the 12th century has had marks from Staffordshire, Stamford and St Neots. Other finds are almost all Staffordshire ware. However, there certainly was a pottery industry in Shropshire during medieval times, including the manufacture of Worcester jugs in Shrewsbury, whilst a medieval kiln has been discovered in Wem. By the modern period, most of the production focused on East Shropshire, and in particular the Iron Bridge Gorge. This would include the following: between the 1600s and 1800s: slipware, white and brown salt glazed stoneware, black glazed Jackfield ware, and everyday earthenware made at Jackfield, Benthall and Ponsall. 1600s to 1857, clay pipes made at Broseley. 1772 to 1926, porcelain made at Caughley, pronounced Caughley, Madeley and Coalport. 1795 to 1800, fine earthenware, ceramics, black basalt were made at Coalport. 1852 to 1969, mass-produced decorative floor and wall tiles were made at Benthall, Jackfield and Broseley. Around the 1860s, the 1890s, earthenware and terracotta made at Coalbrookdale. And around the 1880s to 1930s, decorative art pottery made at Benthall and Jackfield. The potworks of Jackfield, which according to the parish register of Stoke-on-Trent, supplied potters to the centre of early pot making in the year 1560. From the 17th through to the 19th century, a thriving earthenware industry developed in Jackfield and Benthall. Clay was probably cut and sold from Ponsall in the mid-17th century. In 1742 or before, John Thurfield, who we certainly know died in 1760, established the Haybuck pottery south of the road from Broseley to Much Wenlock, on the northern border of Ponsall. It produced earthenwares. Unlike the Thursfield's family's other works, it did not later produce Jackfield ware. Thursfield was succeeded by his son John, who died in 1789. In the 1770s, the younger John leased 4 pothouses at Ponsall. 2 years later, he built a new pottery on the north the Benthall side of the road. Tickney porcelain, created and developed in Derbyshire, and may have been imported, but it might also have been made in Broseley and Jackfield. It was used locally. The Jackfield and Benthall potteries that developed from the late 17th century produced many wares similar to those made in Stoke-on-Trent. The Jackfield and Benthall potteries were established and operated through the 18th century by potters whose origins were in Stoke-on-Trent. Jackfield was originally produced in England in the 1740s, although it was not popular until 1750. Jackfield was being produced in 1740s and 1750s by Thomas Wheeldon in Staffordshire, England. Wheeldon's Jackfield tended to have a regular body and brighter black glaze. The Jackfield pottery, a shop founded in Shropshire by Maurice Thursfield, in 1750 also produced this ware. Jackfield declined in production by the late 1700s, although low-quality replicas continued to be made until the 1800s. Since this time period, several replicas of the ceramic type have been made, including during the Jackfield revival period during the 1870s and 1880s. The revival Jackfield products, however, tend to be a black glaze over a thicker terracotta or white earthenware body. The earliest master potters were Gardner, Simpson, Bird, Glover and Garner, and they all had Staffordshire origins. During the 18th century, particularly from 1720s through to the 1780s, the Thursfield family provided the dynasty of potters operating properties on at least 3 sites in Jackfield and Benthall. Furthermore, until William Greatback relocated to Broseley in 1788, there is scant evidence to imply that these Staffordshire potters were responsible for any notable advancements in manufacturing technology, product specification or quality. During the initial 2 decades of the 1800s, the base earthenware sector at Jackfield and Benthall properties experienced a decline concurrent with the relocation of the Caughley porcelain factory to the new Coalport location on the north bank of the river. Now, the clay pipe industry of Broseley was of national importance. Pipe clay was easily obtained at Bethnal Marsh, where it could be dug clandestinely from the roadside, and was also found in the Old Park and Wiley estate. The earliest documented pipe maker identified was George Deakin. It would seem that pipes were either distributed on foot or that production was sold to hawkers and peddlers. The road network was essential for distributing pipes, and Broseley was linked to both the river port at Bridge North and the medieval bridge at Buildwas, the safest place to cross the River Severn. The pipe-making industry centred just as much around Much Wenlock, sent pipes overland to the River Severn at Bridge North. One Much Wenlock manufacturer was recorded as John Roberts. Despite the pipe industry later consolidating around Broseley, this customary route to the river via Much Wenlock to Bridge North continued in use. The constant supply of pipes passing through the town meant that Bridge North did not develop its own pipe-making industry. River transport was to the port of Gloucester and beyond. In the early to mid-19th century, 3 large producers, Pitchyard, Leggs, Hill and King Street, were established by Roden, Southern and Smitherman families, employing a significant number of people. The Calcut China manufactory operated in Jackfield. Only a few documentary references survive to Calcut's, sometimes called Calcut, factory, which indicates it was in production by December 1794. Within 2 years or so, was subsumed into John Rose's new porcelain venture at nearby Coalport. Currently, researchers believe that an English soft plate porcelain was produced using soap rock in the recipe. Teaware's mugs and jugs have been attributed to the factory, and a range of underglazed blueprinted designs have been identified, alongside overglazed painted patterns. It was probably the origin of the willow pattern design, which is so evocative to my youth. Indeed, I recall my Uncle Jack explaining the story to me, incorporating a smudge of egg yolk as the sun rising. 2 swallows flying high, a little boat passing by, a little bridge with willows over, 3 men going to Dover. Now Dover church stands very bare, twice a week they worship there, a little tree with apples on, and plated palings in the sun. Now the Caughley, I don't know, I flinch when I say Caughley. I'm certain this is antique dealers because it's written Caughley. And coming from Shropshire, I instinctively would say Caughley. I don't believe locals would call it Caughley. I think it's just something that antique dealers have done. I might be wrong, but it was also known as a Salopian China manufactory. Were in production by 1775. It was founded at the site in the countryside 2 miles south of Broseley, where there was both clay and coal. The founder was Thomas Turner, who was born in 1749, who trained as an engraver at the Worcester Porcelain Company. He continued production until 1799, when, suffering from ill health, he sold his lease to John Rose, a former apprentice of Caughley and partners of Coalport. The oldest porcelain known to have been made in Shropshire is called Caughley, or Salopian porcelain, and it was manufactured by Thomas Turner and Ambrose Gilmore. Production was first focused on transport printed imitation Chinese porcelain tableware, which is most renowned for the willow pattern that was brought into Britain at the period. In the late 1700s, the business dominated the porcelain market. Turner had studied transport printing in Worcester, and in 1775 the most renowned porcelain engraver at the time, Robert Hancock, moved from Worcester to Caughley. Despite being favoured by the nobility, Salopian China was not as popular as Worcester. Around 18... Coalport was a centre of porcelain and pottery production between about 1795 and 1926, with the Coalport porcelain brand continuing to be used up to the present. There were 2 factories either side of the Coalport Canal, which opened in 1792, adjoining the River Severn at Coalport. Both factories made mostly tablewares and had elaborate overlays decorations, mostly with floral subjects. A further round of mergers in 1819 brought moulds and skilled staff from Nantgower Porcelain and Swansea Porcelain to Coalbrookdale. The Coalport factory was founded by John Rose in 1795. He continued to run it successfully until his death in 1841. The company often sold its wares as Coalbrookdale porcelain, especially the pieces with flowers moulded in 3 dimensions. Rose employed William Bingsley, formerly at Nantgower, as chief painter, and Bingsley's chemist Walker, who initiated at Coalport a maroon glaze and brought the Nantgower technical recipes to Rose at Coalport. Coalbrookdale and Coalport were experts in providing supper services based on the Chinese rather than Indian prototypes. The well-known Indian tree pattern was a boyhood favourite of mine, first created at Coalport. Since then, almost all British tableware manufacturers have made variations of design, which are still in production today. In the middle of the 19th century, Coalbrookdale copied models that originated at Meissen and Certh, often using descriptive markings. In 1820, Rose received the gold medal of the Society of Arts for his felspar porcelain and an improved lead-free glaze, with which the enamel colours fused in firing. The business started using the blue outline that was printed with light transfer in the 1830s to direct the painters. This allowed Rose to maintain production rate while preserving some of the flexibility of hand-painted embellishments. During the 19th century, other manufacturers widely used this technique. At the Great Exhibition, London 1851, an elaborate Coalport table service with deep borders of Marzine blue was displayed. It had been commissioned by Queen Victoria as a gift to Tsar Nicholas I of Russia. In the second half of the 19th century, Coalport manufacturers added yet another specialisation to their repertoire of hand-decorated porcelains, This included jewelling, whereby small beads of coloured enamel were applied, and most often to the gold ground. A part of the old factory, now a museum with a bottle kiln behind and a canal running through the works. From the 1800s to 1814, Rosie's brother Thomas operated a small works on the other side of the town, initially with William Reynolds, who died in 1803, an industrialist, and Robert Horton. After Reynolds' death, his cousin, Robert Anstis, became a partner. They were taken over by J. Rose and Co. in 1814. The same year, John Rose moved the Caughley production a short distance to the Coalport site. John Rose died in 1841. The enterprise was continued under the former name John Rose and Co. by his nephew W. F. Rose and William Pugh. William Pugh continued the production as sole proprietor from 1862 until his death in 1875, after which the company was put into receivership by his heirs. It was purchased in 1880 by the East Anglian engineer Peter Brough, who died in 1900, who reinstated it as the Coalport China Company. Under the management of his son Charles Brough from 1889, an extensive export trade to the United States and Canada was initiated in the 1890s, and the works were rebuilt on the original site in 1902. During the 1920s, it fell again into financial difficulties and was eventually taken over by Calden Potteries of Sheldon, Staffordshire in 1925. In 1926, production moved to Staffordshire, the traditional centre of the ceramics industry in Britain, and although the Coalport name was retained as a brand, in 1967 the company became a part of the Wedgwood Group. Martin Randall established China works at Madeley and made porcelain similar to that of Nantgower, and little, if at all, inferior to the old Sir's porcelain. He and his brother Edward were both Caughley men. He left there to go to Derby and afterwards went on to Pinxton, and thence with Mr. Robins to London, where they entered into a business partnership and carried on their business. They were supplied with Nantgower white china by Mr. Mortlock, till Mr. Rose cut off the supply of the Welsh works by engaging Billingsley and Walker to make it for himself alone at the Coalport works. They continued to carry out the business at Islington, where they erected buildings suitable and fired the ware in box kilns with charcoal. About the year 1826 they dissolved the partnership, and Mr. Randall came to Madeley, where he occupied a house in Park Lane. Mr. Randall then moved to from Madeley to Shelton in the potteries to seek work. He was invited by the late Herbert Minton to become a partner, which he declined, preferring to remain retired. In the 1800s, several potteries existed in the hamlet of Bethnal, two of which were opposite each other on the Bethnal Lane, now the B4275, Broseley to Much Wenlock Road. Bethnal Pottery was on the north side of Bethnal Lane at the junction with the avenue leading to Bethnal Hall. The older Haybrook Pottery was south of the lane. During the 18th and first half of the 19th century, Bethnal and Haybrook potteries operated independent to each other, changing hands several times. The two properties were eventually merged into one business circa 1832 under the ownership of Edwin Bathurst, 1802 to 1861. Salopian art property, not to be confused with Caughley's Salopian Wares, was a range of decorative and animal wares made by the Bethnal Pottery at Bethnal between around 1800 and up till around 1930. Pieces were marked with a variety of impressive and inscribed marks the most frequently being Salopian, in uppercase printer's type. The brick and roof tile industries of Broseley and Jackfield experienced growth and development through two products that were initially used by cottagers non-commercially to fulfil a role of personal subsistence. Eventually production moved on through small commercial brickles to large-scale factory production. When the industry began in the 17th century, it had a locational moving framework. Small projects in the districts east and along the riverbank began to take shape starting in the middle of the 18th century. But by the early 19th century, massive, highly capitalised cake preparation, drying and pressing shops, as well as kiln complex had taken place. The industrialisation of the ceramic, brick and tiles took place in three different stages, each characterised by different scale and style of operations. From the solitary non-commercial operator, tiny cottage-based brick kilns, huge, highly capitalised factory-based, and so on. A large proportion of the bricks and tiles produced in the district were used locally. Improvements in specification and quality formed a useful source of analysis of spatial and building development for the 150 years from the late 17th century. From the second decade to the 19th century, the brick and roof tile and caustic tile industries of the Calcut Valley and Jackfield Riverside proved to be the economic saviour of the South Bank parishes. The first encaustic tiles were actually created in the 1830s by the Exley's Roof Tile Company, not by the more well-known companies. Broseley Tileries, one of the last of the 10 other brick and roofing tile companies in the area at the turn of the century. The company was located on the outskirts of the town. The name Broseley Tiles originated to refer to the best strawberry-coloured roof tiles. The brick and roofing tiling industry began much earlier, transitioning from the small-scale craft-made production to integrated factories in the late 18th and early 19th century. Today it is still active in 10 major factories along the Calcut Valley and on the Jackfield Riverbank. The Madeley Wood Company produced bricks in the Eyebridge Gorge, whilst the Coalport Company's brick and pot works near Horsley primarily made refractory clay vessels, and existed by 1796 when the new roundware and dish moulding houses were added. Fire bricks were also made at Horsley in the 1790s, and the works making white bricks east of the pottery continued in operation until after 1882. The brickworks was taken over circa 1900 by the day's Automatic Wastewater Closet and Sanitary Pipe Syndicate Limited, a Wolverhampton firm. This closed circa 1915. A group of large brickworks were established in the Lightware area next to Doseley in the early 19th century. Shutfield and Cherry Tree Hill brickworks had been built in 1825. From 1838, or maybe earlier, to the 1930s, they were operated by successive tenants of Woodlands Farm, but they were later leased to the Coalport Company, which had also works making red bricks at Lightmoor, recorded from 1852. In 1894, all three works concentrated on tile production, using red clay from the Coalport beds, mined locally, and fire clay from mines in Great Dorley. Mining continued at Lightmoor until the 1830s. The Cherry Tree Hill brickworks closed in the early 20th century, but other works remained open for some time. The Lightmoor works was taken over by Colmore Refractories Limited circa 1951, the Shutfield works by an engineering firm in 1961. The Colmore Sanitary Pipe Company Limited, later the Colmore Sanitary Pipe the new Coalport Sanitary Pipe Company Limited, made sanitary pipes and fire bricks near Woodlands Farm from 1802 to circa 1948, using fire clay mines nearby. The company was bought circa 1948 by Coalmore Refractories Limited, makers of refractory bricks for the steel industry, for which local fire clays were particularly well suited. In 1951 they acquired the Lightmoor Brickworks and transferred their brickmaking operations there. In 1980 the company employed around 150 in both clay quarrying and brickmaking sides of its activity. Drainage pipes were manufactured in Broseley and Madeley, especially Doseley, millions of which were exported across the empire. In 1928 the Doseley Brick Company, later the Doseley Pipe Company Limited, one of Johnson's group of companies, started to make common bricks at Doseley from the clay overburden in the basalt quarry there. The works changed from making salt clay stoneware pipes in 1932 and continued to manufacture vitrified clay pipes until 1975. The works are now owned by Enstone. George Wilkinson Randley Brickworks was on the side of what is now Telford Town Park, whilst Lord Gower's Lillishall Company produced bricks in Donington. Prior to the 21st century, there were many brickyards in North Shropshire, many towns with clay deposits producing bricks, including Wem and Weston Rhyn. The brickworks located at Sweeney near Oswestry were leased by Stanley Leighton to the Oswestry Coal and Brick Company Limited prior to 1880, and then to the Sweeney Brick Company Limited, whose registered office were in Manchester. After 1885 it was leased to Kay and Hindle Limited as the Sweeney Brick and Terracotta Works, and ceased trading by 1901. At Westbury there was the Sarn Brick and Pipe Works, which closed in 1872. In Hanwood, a byproduct of coal mining was clay, which was utilised in brickmaking, in addition to that from the clay pit in Orchard Lane, Hanwood. It utilised the clay from the Hanwood pit, which was known for easily igniting and producing an intense heat, but ceased working by 1945. Hanwood bricks were in great demand as liners, as they were cheaper than most other Shropshire-made bricks. I've also seen a picture of an old brickworks at Oldbury in Shropshire. Somehow I doubt if this is Oldbury near Bridge North, but Oldbury in the Black Country, which was in the enclave of Shropshire removed at the time. Henry Powell Dunhill established Craven Dunhill Co Limited in Jackfield in 1872. A Staffordshire-born architect with a speciality in industrial building design, Charles Linnan created a purpose-built factory that was at the forefront of technology. Craven Dunhill became renowned throughout the empire for its ceramic floor and wall tiles, in particular its encaustic floor tiles and highly decorative wall tiles. By the late 19th century, the construction demands of the British Empire had become major factors in the growth and success of the company. And by the turn of the century, Craven Dunhill had become renowned throughout the world for its floor tiles in cathedrals, courthouses, banks, government buildings, hospitals, and indeed pubs. In 1916, F.C. Howells, a resident of Ironbridge, returned to take over the company as managing director. Howells had experienced success at Pilkington Tile and Pottery Co., my personal favourite potters, designing the tiles used throughout Victoria Baths in Manchester, which I was a friend of and attended a hacienda party and a Northern Soul all-nighter in. The commencement of his position at the helm represented an evolution for the company. The role had subsequently been occupied by the Howells family for 5 consecutive generations. In the 1950s, Craven Dunhill & Co moved to its current headquarters based in Bridge North, and the original Craven Dunhill factory was acquired by the Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust, becoming one of their main museum sites, situated in the World Heritage Site of the Ironbridge Gorge. And manufacturing returned to the original Craven Dunhill site in 2000, where today the company is a manufacturer of traditionally styled decorative tiles for projects all over the world. My personal favourite, Maw and Co, made earthenware and caustic tiles for walls and floors since 1850, when the English company was established by George Maw and his brother Arthur. The first factory was in Worcester in 1862, and the company then moved to Broseley in the Ironbridge Gorge. In 1883, they moved to the Benthall works in Jackfield. The new purpose-built factory was the largest tile works in the world. The company was the world's largest producer of ceramic tiles, making more than 20 million pieces a year. The range of tiles was expanded over the years and included relief tiles, encaustic tiles, mosaic tiles, transfer printed tiles and hand-painted picture tiles. Designs included Art Nouveau and Art Deco geometric designs. In the 1890s, Maw and Co started making high-quality art pottery. They employed artists such as Lewis Foreman Day and Walter Crane from Birkenhead, the reason for my love of Maw and Co, to design both art pottery and tiles. Sanitary wares and bricks were manufactured by Lillishall and Co in Oakengates. Lord Gower's interest in clay is mentioned in this poem about his Highland clearances in his role as the Duke of Sutherland. Along the bare slopes of broad brown brae, beneath the cold grey-blue October sky, what thing is that smokes and snorts away, mingling strange shrillness of the peewit's cry? 'Tis the stout carriage of Titan steam, which the brave Duke hath marched into this land, the savage Moor from the wilderness to redeem, by gracious force of labour's fruitful hand. Oh, it brings marrow to the bones to see the right man sometimes in the right man's place, who knows his work from weak and wavering free, holds his sure course and moves with measured pace, even as this Duke subdues the angry mould, tames the harsh rock and turns clay to gold. And that was J.S. Blakey and his called Lurg.